Hello, good morning everyone. Welcome to another Art for All group, or should I say good afternoon. My name is Lucy, I'm a creative artist working at St Christopher's Hospice, and normally in the Anniversary Centre every Tuesday at 2 p.m. there is an Art for All group, so that means that patients, community members, volunteers, staff members, friends and family can all come to St Christopher's Cafe and make art together. Obviously with the pandemic, we've moved the group online, so we meet up here on YouTube and talk about art activities once a week, 2 p.m, same time every week. Today I'd like to share with you some ideas for just getting started and working with clay. So I have got a big tub of clay here. Oh, you might have some at home, you might be able to order some. You can get smaller packets if you don't want to have quite such a big, bucket of clay. I'm going to show you two ways that you can make a bowl. So first of all, I'm going to get a piece of clay, this piece, and I'm going to roll it. I've got my little, got a cup rather than a rolling pin, so you can use whatever you have to hand and just roll it kind of nice and fairly thin. You don't want it too thick. And I've got air drying clay here. If you happen to have access to a kiln, in which case you will probably be more proficient at this than I am. Then if you have access to a kiln, use kind of non-air drying clay. But if you don't have access to a kiln, as I don't at home, then using air drying clay means that you don't need to heat up the clay, you just let it dry in the air in your house. You can put it in the airing cupboard if you want it to speed up a little bit, but this just means that it will dry and you don't need to apply excess heat to it, don't need to put it in the oven. It's got little fibres in it that hold it together and strengthen it. So it's quite good when you're just starting out working with clay. So you can see it's got a lot flatter now. And my other tools that I haven't actually got any other tools. I've got 2 cups, one which has water in, one which is my rolling pin, and also my mould. You could find clay tools online in your local craft shop, or on any online supermarket stores. They have craft materials. They probably have clay cutting tools. But you don't really need, for this, you don't really need tools. You can just use your hands. It's quite simple. So I'm going to roll this out a little bit more. Okay, and now I'm going to get this off my board if I can. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I am going to sit this on top here. So I'm going to push it down, pushing it down until I feel like I've got a nice depth in there. So I'm going to go a little bit further and try not to break it as I go through. So yeah, so there we go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slice it off. Probably actually do this way. Slice it off, kind of like when you're making scones or cookies as a child. So yeah, so here we go. We have this now, and you can actually maybe see some of the little fibres hold it together. I'm going to leave this here for a little bit, and I will let that dry. So that's one way of making a bowl. And if you have, I might push that down a little bit. There we go. If you have any wider vessels, so wider vases, wider glasses that aren't too delicate, then you can use those just to make whatever shape of bowls you like. And actually, you can even press clay into bowls that you already have and just use the inside of the bowl as a cast. Sometimes you might want to put cling film in there so that you can get the clay out easily if it's a rough texture, but the clay should generally come out easily. I suppose maybe don't do it on a bowl that you really, really value, but have an experiment, see what works. You can also get specialist kind of plaster bowl casts that when you put clay in them, they get the water out of the clay really quickly and make them dry very, very fast. So actually you press the clay into this cast, and then within a couple of minutes you can actually lift the bowl out. It becomes leather hard, which is a term when people are making pottery. You can still carve into it, but it's not going to fall apart in your hands. It's not going to be overly runny. So yeah, that means that you can then start working on it. So now you might have noticed while I was speaking, I am making something else. So I am rolling this leftover piece of clay out into a long, thin sausage. I'm trying to get it even. At the moment it is a bit wonky. You want it to be as kind of smoothly circular as possible. And this is often best done by working in small sections, and often good if you're standing up for this as well. I think you can do it sitting down, but sometimes good to have a bit more control from standing up. Oops, got my laptop there. And so I'm just going to carry on trying to make it all fairly even length all the way along. So I don't want one end that's really, really wide and one end that's really, really skinny. I want them kind of, the sausage to be the same all the way along. So you can see that this actually quite small piece of clay has now turned into a lot longer piece of clay. Once it gets really, really long, and if it gets a little bit dry, it can become quite delicate. So I'm going to add a little bit of water on here. So I've got this long coil of clay, and what I'm going to show you now is a really ancient method of pot making, and this is making a coiled pot. So you start by coiling clay, and as you go with your water sealing it. So I'm going to pop this down now, pop it here so you can see it, and I'm going to quite tightly coil it, and as I go I'm going to squidge it and smooth it. And this is a good technique for hand building. So this is where you don't need a mould, you don't need a potter's wheel, you don't need really any even cutting equipment actually for this. You can just use your hands. I'm going to add a little bit more water. You can just use your hands and smooth things in to make pot. And now this is probably a slightly large sausage for what I'm trying to make. I'm going to start building this up. So I'm going to make it into a slightly higher layer. So I'm going to smooth this, and then I'm trying to keep the walls as vertical as I can. And you want to try and keep the walls going up as vertically as you can, because clay will always have a tendency to kind of buckle outwards. So if you keep kind of almost over directing the clay towards the centre of your vessel, you'll end up probably with straighter sides if that's what you're aiming for. And even if you are aiming for your pot to eventually kind of flute outwards, it's quite a good idea to sort of create the vertical sides and then create the fluting afterwards, because then you just have more control of the shape of your pot, and you have a stronger pot, stronger foundations of your pot. So you can see here, and I'm adding quite a fair bit of water now, which I'm not sure it's technically, maybe I'm sort of cheating slightly, but I'm using my fingers and I'm just running them around. I'm really trying to reinforce those joints, and adding a bit more water in here, and then here. And the taller this gets, the more difficult it might get to work with, and to keep the sides vertical. So you can see even now, actually, the sides are slightly trying to get out. So I'm actually curving it in, moving it up, curving like this, and then I'm just going to try and even out the top edges. So I'm going to do that by folding down. This might create a thicker edge, but a slightly more even top. So, and this is a really tiny, tiny little pot. I'm actually going to turn it around so I can see this side. Yeah, okay. And I'm going to, just where the join is, I'm just using my thumb and my finger on the inside of the pot, my thumb on the outside, to support it and try and really join the clay together so that it becomes this one solid piece. And then just folding the clay there, and yeah. And you can then, around the bottom, you can then start kind of, once you're happy with the shape of your pot, and mine is very agricultural looking, you can start to shape the bottom, and you might want to shape the inside as well. So I'll shape this up and I'll just make it into, I'm going to make it into kind of a flower shape, I think. So I'm going to press some of these in and let some of these come out. Yeah, so I've got this little bowl that is not the most beautiful bowl in the world, but it is a start. And you can experiment with this. You can try to try with thicker pieces of, or longer pieces of sausages. So this is my other one, my other little bowl that is slightly more uniform than this one. So this is the one that I just took out of the top of here. So this one's actually worked quite nicely. And ideas of things you could do: you could mark the inside of this. If you have any letters, stamps, not the things you put on a postcard, but kind of like stamps that you might stamp ink in. If you have letters, you can stamp those out in here, make little messages, or if you have any designs you want to carve in, if you do have tools, or even if you just have a fork or a knife, you can just kind of make little patterns and then it will dry like that. And after this, if you have air drying clay, you can paint it, and it will turn into, yeah, something quite different. I'm going to just see if I can move this. Ooh. Yeah, there we go. And you see the bottom where the coil was, so I'm going to rearrange the bottom a bit as well. So smooth it all in. So yeah, we have freeform bowl and much more regular bowl. So I hope that this has been interesting. If you do know anything about working with clay, then this maybe hasn't been the most educational. But if you've never worked with clay before and you'd like to give it a go, I think you can see from me doing this, I'm no expert, but I really enjoy working with clay, and it's really easy to do. It's really fun. You do get a little bit messy, so I have a towel here, and I might just dip my fingers in the water that that I've got left over from here. Just and then get my towel, just wipe my hands off before I go. Often wash my hands properly in a basin. But thank you very much for joining today. I'll be sharing next week some more artists who work with clay and trying to make different things with clay, so maybe more sculptural forms with clay, and I hope that you might like to join that as well. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you will have good weeks, and look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you. Goodbye.